A piercing roar shattered the midnight silence at Oak Ridge Wildlife Reserve, echoing above the thunderstorm raging outside. Eleanor Ellie Martinez bolted upright from her chair, spilling coffee across stacks of monitoring reports. On the security screen before her, Nala, their rescued leopard, writhed in obvious agony on the floor of her enclosure. Blood darkened the straw beneath her powerful frame as she fought to bring new life into the world. "Dr. Thornton!" Ellie shouted into her radio, fingers trembling as she zoomed the camera in. "She's in labor. Something's wrong." Lightning illuminated the observation room in harsh, white flashes, followed by booming thunder that seemed to shake the building's foundation. Ellie raced down the corridor, her footsteps drowned by the storm's fury. Nala's tortured growls grew louder with each step. The rare black leopard, rescued a year earlier from exotic animal traffickers, had been malnourished and abused when they found her. Now, as she struggled through her first birth, Ellie feared they might lose both mother and cubs before the storm broke. Hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Dr. Marcus Thornton was already at the observation window when Ellie arrived, his silver hair disheveled, experienced eyes narrowed with concern as he studied the laboring leopard. "She's delivered 2 cubs," he noted, pointing to small, dark shapes barely visible at the edge of the enclosure. "But she's not attending to them." Ellie pressed her face against the reinforced glass. Through the dim emergency lighting, she could see Nala panting heavily in the corner of her habitat. Several feet away lay 2 tiny, wet bundles, barely moving on the straw-covered floor. "We need to wait," Dr. Thornton said, placing a weathered hand on Ellie's shoulder. "If we intervene too soon, she might reject them permanently." The next 72 hours became a vigil of hope and desperation. Staff members worked in shifts, watching as Nala occasionally glanced at her offspring, but made no move to nurse or clean them. The cubs' weak cries grew fainter with each passing hour. "It's the 3rd day," Ellie reported during the morning staff meeting, dark circles beneath her eyes. "The male is still reasonably active, but the female has barely moved since midnight." Dr. Thornton removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Nala was taken from her mother too young. She was raised as a pet until she grew too dangerous, then kept in a tiny cage. She never learned proper maternal behaviors." "We can't wait any longer," said Jamie, one of the junior keepers. "They'll die without intervention." With reluctant agreement, they prepared for emergency action. When Nala was distracted with feeding, keepers entered with tranquilizer guns at the ready. They quickly retrieved the cubs, now dangerously dehydrated and underweight. In the medical facility, Ellie cradled the female cub, smaller than her brother and barely responsive. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, their spotted coats appeared dull and lifeless. "Formula isn't enough, Doctor," Thornton declared after examining them. "Cubs this young need antibodies from mother's milk. Without it—" He didn't need to finish his sentence. Ellie paced the room, mind racing through options. What about cross-fostering? It's been done with other big cats in emergency situations. With another big cat, perhaps, Doctor? Thornton sighed. But we don't have any nursing females at the reserve. A memory flashed through Ellie's mind, a photograph on her friend Sophia's social media page. Sophia Williams, who owned a small farm near Riverside, just 20 minutes from the reserve. The image showed her German Shepherd Daisy, proudly nursing a litter of puppies born just last week. "What about a dog?" Ellie asked suddenly. "Doctor." Thornton looked up sharply. "A domestic dog, as a surrogate for leopard cubs? Dogs have successfully nursed other species," Ellie pressed on. "Their milk is rich in nutrients and antibodies." "It's unorthodox," Dr. Thornton admitted, gently stroking the male cub's head with his index finger. "Leopards are apex predators, far more dangerous than most animals we've tried this with." Ellie reached for her phone. "I know someone whose German Shepherd just whelped. Most of her puppies didn't make it. She has only one left. She'd have plenty of milk. Doctor." Thornton considered for a moment, watching the female cub struggle for each breath. "Make the call," he said finally. "Tell your friend we need a miracle." As the phone rang, Ellie watched the tiny cubs huddled together for warmth under the heat lamp. Their lives hung by a thread, dependent on whether a mother of one species would accept the offspring of another. The greatest irony wasn't lost on her. These leopard cubs, whose wild ancestors had hunted canines for millennia, now needed a dog to survive. Nature had never intended such an alliance, yet it might be their only hope. Sophia Williams stood on the wraparound porch of her farmhouse, morning coffee steaming in her hands as she watched Ellie's mud-splattered SUV navigate the winding driveway. The storm had passed, leaving behind puddles that reflected the breaking dawn. Inside the mudroom, Daisy lay in her wicker bed, her German Shepherd frame curled protectively around Tucker, her sole surviving puppy. 5 small wooden markers beneath the old oak tree testified to the hardships of the recent birth. "You want my dog to nurse leopard cubs?" Sophia's voice cracked with disbelief after Ellie explained her desperate mission. "Actual wild leopards." "Have you lost your mind?" Ellie knelt beside Daisy, whose intelligent amber eyes studied her with cautious interest. The dog's swollen teats evidenced abundant milk meant for a litter of 7, though only Tucker had survived. "I know how it sounds," Ellie admitted, gently stroking Daisy's head. "But these cubs represent one of the rarest black leopard bloodlines in conservation. Without mother's milk, they won't survive another day." Sophia crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. "And what happens to Tucker while Daisy's playing surrogate to predators?" "He comes too," Ellie promised quickly. "We'd never separate them. Tucker and the cubs would be raised together." The farmhouse creaked in the morning breeze, while Sophia contemplated the impossible request. She'd known Ellie since college, trusted her judgment in wildlife matters. But this was Daisy, the companion who'd stayed by her side through her husband Michael's long battle with cancer 3 years ago. "Let me see these cubs first," Sophia finally decided. "Then I'll make up my mind." 2 hours later, they arrived at Oak Ridge Wildlife Reserve, Daisy and Tucker secured in the back of Sophia's truck. The medical facility smelled of antiseptic and anxiety as Dr. Thornton led them to the isolation room where the incubator hummed softly against the wall. "The male is stabilizing," he explained, adjusting his glasses. "We're calling him Leo, but Luna, the female, she's failing rapidly." Daisy, leashed beside Sophia, strained forward with obvious interest, her nose twitching as she caught the cub's scent. In the carrier beside her, Tucker whimpered softly. "There's something you should know," Sophia said hesitantly. "Daisy hates cats, always has. Chases every barn cat that dares cross our property." Ellie's heart sank. This critical detail threatened their last hope. She exchanged worried glances with Dr. Thornton, whose expression had grown grave. "Perhaps we should consider," he began, but fell silent as Sophia unclipped Daisy's leash. "Let her decide," Sophia said firmly. "She's got better instincts than all of us combined." The room grew tense as Daisy approached the incubator. Her powerful jaws could end the cubs' fragile lives in seconds if instinct overrode compassion. Ellie held her breath as the German shepherd pressed her nose against the clear plastic, whiskers twitching as she investigated the tiny occupants. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Daisy whined, the same maternal sound she made when checking on Tucker. "She wants to see them," Sophia translated, surprise evident in her voice. With trembling hands, Dr. Thornton carefully lifted Leo from the incubator. The cub, barely larger than a guinea pig, mewed weakly as he placed it on a sterile blanket on the examination table. Daisy approached cautiously, ears forward, tail held neutrally. She sniffed the cub thoroughly, then looked back at Tucker in his carrier, as if making connections between the creatures. Then, in a moment that brought tears to Ellie's eyes, Daisy began to gently lick the cub's spotted fur. "Maternal instinct is transcending species," Dr. Thornton murmured, voice thick with emotion. The team worked quickly to prepare a special enclosure, warm, private, with soft bedding and monitoring equipment. Tucker was settled first, then Daisy herself entered the space. With infinite care, Dr. Thornton placed both leopard cubs near her. "This is the moment of truth," he whispered. Daisy sniffed each cub again, then nudged them toward her belly alongside Tucker. Within moments, both cubs found their way to her teats and began to suckle, their tiny paws kneading rhythmically against her fur. "Look at Luna," Ellie gasped, pointing to the smaller cub. "She's nursing strongly." Indeed, the female cub, who had barely moved in the incubator, was now actively feeding, her tiny body showing more vigor with each swallow of Daisy's rich milk. Sophia wiped unexpected tears from her weather-lined cheeks. "I've seen Daisy chase full-grown cats up trees," she said wonderingly. "But somehow she knows these babies need her." As the unlikely family settled in, Ellie made notes for what would surely become a groundbreaking case study. What was happening before her eyes defied natural order. A canine nursing future apex predators, creatures evolved specifically to hunt animals like her. "Leo and Luna," she said softly, watching the spotted cubs nursing alongside their new canine brother. Products of an impossible love. Days melted into weeks at Oak Ridge Wildlife Reserve as an extraordinary bond flourished in the special observation enclosure. Daisy settled into her role as surrogate mother with remarkable dedication, defying the natural order. Leo and Luna, once teetering on death's edge, now tumbled about with growing strength, their spotted coats gleaming with health beneath the soft monitoring lights. Their weight has tripled, Dr. Thornton announced during the weekly assessment, genuine amazement softening his typically clinical demeanor. Luna's cardiac function has improved dramatically. I would have bet my medical license we'd lose her. Ellie scribbled notes furiously, documenting every milestone. Leo still has that peculiar chirping vocalization. Is that normal for leopard cubs? The elderly veterinarian nodded. It's a natural communication signal. What's remarkable is that he uses it specifically with Daisy, not with Luna. He's developing a unique language just for his surrogate mother. Behind the observation glass, the heartwarming scene unfolded like something from a children's storybook. Leo stalked Tucker's wagging tail while Luna practiced her leaping skills from atop a small platform. The German shepherd puppy, now nearly the same size as his leopard siblings, played with surprising gentleness despite their increasingly sharp claws. Daisy watched from her perch on a raised bed, intervening with soft growls when play grew too aggressive. She corrects the cubs exactly as she does Tucker, observed Jamie, now assigned full-time to the special project. But have you noticed how she gives Luna more freedom? Almost like she recognizes Luna's natural agility demands more room for expression. Perhaps most remarkable was how Daisy had imprinted behaviors entirely foreign to leopard nature. When she barked a specific pattern, all three youngsters, canine and feline alike, would immediately cease their activities and return to her side. She's teaching them dog behaviors, Sophia explained during one of her tri-weekly visits. German shepherds have strong pack mentality with clear boundaries. She's raising them with a moral code that wild leopards would never develop naturally. Not everyone at the reserve appreciated the unorthodox arrangement. Bernard Walters, the conservation director, voiced concerns during the monthly assessment meeting as the cubs entered their 12th week. We're running a wildlife rehabilitation program, not creating circus performers, he argued, pointing to the behavioral reports. These cubs need to develop proper predatory behaviors if they're ever to survive in a natural habitat or breeding program. They're learning to be dogs, not leopards. They would have had no behaviors at all if they died, Ellie countered, protective instincts flaring. Besides, we're documenting unprecedented cross-species fostering data. The research implications are enormous. The debate became moot the following week when Leo slashed a volunteer's arm during a routine enclosure cleaning. Though the gash was shallow, it required stitches and signaled a critical turning point. The cubs were growing rapidly, their wild predatory instincts surfacing despite their unusual upbringing. We always knew this day would come, Dr. Thornton said gently, examining the volunteer's bandaged arm while Daisy watched anxiously from her enclosure. They're wild animals, regardless of who raised them. The decision to separate the unusual family came with heavy hearts. A specialized enclosure was prepared for Leo and Luna, spacious and enriched with features that would encourage their natural leopard behaviors. The transition would be gradual, a few hours apart each day, extending slowly to overnight separations. No one anticipated Daisy's reaction. The German shepherd howled mournfully when the cubs were first removed, pacing frantically at the enclosure door and refusing food. Leo and Luna, too, pressed themselves against the mesh of their new habitat, emitting distress calls that eerily mimicked Tucker's whimpers. "She's grieving," Sophia observed on the 5th day of separation. Tucker huddled against his mother, equally subdued by the absence of his playmates. "I've never seen her like this, not even after losing her puppies." Ellie swallowed the lump in her throat. "The longer we wait, the harder the transition will be. Leo and Luna need to develop as leopards now." That night, security cameras captured Daisy somehow managing to slip through a staff entrance and navigate to the cub's enclosure. Workers arrived the next morning to find her sleeping pressed against the outer barrier, as close as she could physically get to her adopted children. "She's not going to let go easily, Doctor," Thornton observed. "But for everyone's safety, we need to make a clean break." The heartbreaking decision was made. 2 days later, Sophia tearfully loaded Daisy and Tucker into her pickup truck to return to the farmhouse at Riverside. The German shepherd's soulful eyes watched the reserve buildings recede in the distance, unaware that 2 young leopards paced along the periphery of their enclosure, tracking the departing vehicle until it vanished from sight. "They'll revert to their wild nature," Bernard assured the emotional staff. "Predators are hardwired differently than domestic animals. Their instincts will take over." But Ellie, watching Leo repeatedly press his nose against the exact spot where Daisy had slept outside their enclosure, wasn't convinced. Some bonds, she suspected, transcended both evolution and the natural order itself. 2 years transformed Oak Ridge Wildlife Reserve. What had begun as a desperate experiment had evolved into a renowned conservation success story. Leo and Luna had matured into magnificent specimens of their species, their sleek black coats glossed with rosettes that shimmered like shadow within shadow, powerful muscles rippling beneath as they moved with the fluid, silent grace that made leopards nature's perfect predators. Luna, once the frailer cub, had developed into an agile, calculating female whose intelligence shone in her golden eyes. Leo, larger and more confident, had grown into his role as sentinel, always the first to investigate any changes to their environment. Together, they had become the reserve's ambassador leopards, their remarkable origin story drawing wildlife researchers and visitors from across the country. "Can you believe it's been 2 years today?" Ellie asked, leaning against the observation railing beside Dr. Thornton. "Sometimes I still expect to see them small enough to fit in my palms." The elderly veterinarian nodded, his once silver hair now completely white. "Nature's resilience never ceases to amaze me, even when humans meddle with its intended path." Behind them, preparations were underway for a special anniversary celebration. Banners proclaimed Leo Luna, a tale of unconventional love, while staff arranged seating for the day's presentation about cross-species conservation successes. "Has Sophia confirmed she's coming, Doctor?" Thornton asked, watching workers adjust the sound system near the leopard's spacious enclosure. Ellie nodded. "She and Tucker should arrive within the hour." "I've arranged special access since it's such a meaningful occasion." What Ellie hadn't mentioned was her secret arrangement with Bernard. For weeks, she had been gradually reintroducing Daisy's scent to Leo and Luna, bringing blankets and toys from Sophia's farm to gauge their reaction. The leopards had shown remarkable interest, investigating the items repeatedly and exhibiting none of the territorial aggression typically shown toward canine scents. By mid-morning, the reserve hummed with visitors. Sophia arrived wearing a floral dress that brightened her typically practical appearance. Beside her walked Tucker, now a magnificent adult German shepherd, and trailing behind them on a sturdy leash came Daisy, grey around the muzzle, but still carrying herself with dignity. "She's been restless since we turned onto the reserve road," Sophia whispered to Ellie during their warm embrace, "like she knows exactly where we are." The formal presentation proceeded as planned. Bernard delivered a polished lecture about the reserve's leopard conservation program, while Dr. Thornton explained the scientific significance of their cross-species fostering success. Visitors listened attentively, cameras flashing as Leo and Luna paced along the perimeter of their habitat, unusually active during what would normally be their resting hours. No one noticed when Daisy's leash slipped from Sophia's hand during a particularly enthusiastic round of applause. "Daisy!" Sophia's panicked cry cut through the crowd noise. "Someone grab her!" Hearts stopped as the German shepherd bolted through the gathered audience and somehow squeezed through a maintenance gate that had been left ajar by a worker. Before anyone could react, Daisy was inside the buffer zone of the leopard's territory, trotting purposefully toward the two sleek predators. "Don't tranquilize!" Ellie shouted to the security team, already raising their dart rifles. "Wait!" The crowd fell into horrified silence. Parents pulled children back from the viewing area, expecting to witness bloodshed. Even Dr. Thornton stepped forward anxiously, his experienced eyes gauging the distance between staff and the potentially deadly encounter. Leo and Luna, alerted by the commotion, turned toward the intruder. Their powerful bodies tensed, tails twitching as they lowered into the instinctive stalking posture that had made their species legendary hunters. Daisy stopped about 15 feet away, her tail held neither high in dominance nor tucked in submission. She simply stood, watching. For what seemed like eternity, nobody moved. Then Luna took a tentative step forward, nostrils flaring as she processed a scent that stirred something deep in her memory. Leo followed, his larger frame moving with surprising restraint. "They're going to attack," Bernard whispered, motioning frantically for the security team. "No," Ellie countered, holding up her hand. "Look at their body language." The leopards approached Daisy with measured steps, circling her with curious sniffs. Then, in a moment that would later be described by witnesses as nothing short of miraculous, Luna pressed her head against Daisy's side. Leo followed, both leopards rubbing against their former surrogate mother in the classic feline gesture of affection and recognition. Daisy stood calmly as these powerful predators, each now nearly twice her weight, circled and nuzzled her. Then, with the same maternal authority she had shown years earlier, she settled onto the ground. The leopards immediately lay beside her, their powerful bodies relaxed in a way that stunned even the most experienced feline specialists present. Tears streamed freely down Sophia's face. "She knew," she whispered. All this time, she remembered them as her babies. As visitors watched in awestruck silence, the unlikely family reunion continued, living proof that some bonds transcend the very laws of nature itself. In that perfect moment at Oak Ridge Reserve, the invisible thread connecting different worlds through the universal language of love was not just visible, it was undeniable. Bernard approached Ellie, professional composure momentarily abandoned. "This defies everything we know about large predator behavior," he admitted, voice thick with emotion. "They should see her as prey, not family." Ellie smiled, watching as Leo playfully nudged Daisy's ear, just as he had done as a cub. "Perhaps we've been measuring the wrong things," she suggested softly. "Science can quantify instinct, genetics, and evolutionary divergence, but it has no formula for love." As afternoon shadows lengthened across the reserve, the improbable family remained together, leopard and dog, predator and prey, united by a bond that had proven stronger than millions of years of evolutionary division and the very call of the wild itself. I hope you enjoyed this story. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss touching stories. Leave a like and then comment below what you thought of the emotional stories. See you in the next video!